Okay, everyone, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's AMA. Today, we're going to walk through the Voyage 8 project. And today, we're going to walk through the Voyage 8. Pardon me, I have an audio issue here. Pardon me, I have an audio issue here. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. So in any event, we're going to go through the project date or the Voyage 8 project schedule and the requirements, kind of walk through what's expected. Basically, the flow is that over the next day or so, you're going to be getting invites to your teams and your villages. So this week is going to be all about meeting your teams, getting to know each other if you haven't met, deciding on what your project will be, and really getting started, getting your workflows down and whatnot. So let me share my screen. Yeah, so basically this is where we're at right now. The Voyage obviously started yesterday, the Voyage Project part. And by the way, congratulations to everyone. You made it through the pre-work. Now is where both the fun and the work really start. So over the next 8 weeks through roughly the 5th of or the 4th of May, you'll be working, deciding on your project, working with your team to build that project. And then at the end of the voyage, making it available. We'll put it in a showcase document that gets sent out and shared with everyone. And then we'll do some celebrations. So in any event, I'm going to take a quick look at the chat. If you have any questions, post them in the YouTube chat, please. We'll do our best to get them answered. So let's start right in. The first task, and the most important task, I think, in my book, is really meeting your team. Over the next 8 weeks, you're going to be spending a lot of time working together, collaborating, and basically participating in the design and the construction of your project. So it's really important that you get to know one another. That you establish a flow and a cadence, if you will, on how you work together. What I would suggest as part of meeting your team is take a look at what your weekly schedule is. Set a fixed day and time that's good for everyone for your weekly stand-ups, your team meetings. If you get that established, and it's at a fixed time, it's just easier. The coordination becomes a little bit easier. Communication is really important. It has to be two-way. And you have to learn, it's important to keep in mind to use give and take. Different people will have really, really good ideas, but for one reason or another, they may not fit. They may not be right for the skill level of the team. There's a lot of reasons why you may decide on a particular set of criteria, ranging from what project are we going to do, all the way through what technology stack are we going to rely on. It's something to keep in mind as well is no one's going to die if this app doesn't work. It's perfectly acceptable. In fact, it's encouraged to make mistakes, and that includes in setting defining things like your tech stack. Working outside of your comfort zone. You've got this opportunity to try things out and to stretch. So one of the questions that came up just now is, what's one of the biggest mistakes or faults we've seen in previous Chingu participants that prevents them from getting the most out of the experience? And I'd say there's really two. Number one is this is not a zero-sum game. It should be a win-win. So even though you may feel very passionately, I just love Angular, for example. If everybody else on the team knows React, maybe React is a better choice. So it's just, again, it's back to that give and take, being open to suggestions and ideas from the other folks on your team, and working towards some consensus. It's not about win or lose. The second thing I've seen is that's a big mistake is ignoring MVP or the minimum viable project. It's really easy to get excited and want to pack in tons of features to your application. Lots of different input choices for your users, lots of just general functionality. The issue with that is all of that adds to the scope of the project, or the amount of work that has to be done. So you want to keep an eye on the fact that you've only got 8 weeks to get this accomplished. So it's better to start small, get this minimum set of features and functionality implemented, and then as time permits, it's perfectly acceptable to go ahead and add to that. So you want to think in kind of agile terms, in terms of releases. I'm just throwing this out hypothetically, but if you take a week to get your workflow down, decide on your project, get your GitHub repo set up. We will be providing that, by the way, this week as well. We'll give you the repos, but you'll have to set up the contents. But anyway, you get that set, and then by week 1, maybe you have your release for the end of week. I said week 1. Your release for the end of week 2 is actually just a framework, just a skeleton of the app. Maybe it's just the splash page. So each week you work to create new releases of your app that build on top one another with additional features. Again, that's key, because by the end of the voyage, what you'll have is you'll have a working app. It may not have all of the features that you'd like, but at least it's working. So I hope that answers that question. One of the questions that's come up is what recourse do you have when you don't get along with one or more of your teammates? My advice there is look at the resources section of the cohort guide or the handbook. We've got a section on managing conflict, but keep in mind that when you get into the job market, there is no voting off the island in a job. You have to work with people. You don't have to like everyone on the team, but you have to work with everyone on the team. So I would keep that in mind, and work to collaborate and communicate with folks. That really helps out a lot. It's not a 100% solution, but it goes a long way to understanding what constraints other people have and why they are taking a certain position. So. So why don't we go on? I'm seeing other questions come in, and that's perfectly fine. I'll get back to those. Why don't we move ahead to choosing your project? So I mentioned the handbook. The handbook, by the way, it is your guide. We've tried to put the lessons learned in the handbook from the 7, actually it's probably closer to 9 or 10 voyages that preceded Voyage 8. We actually had a earlier version of voyages that they didn't go by the voyage name. They went by a different name. So we've tried to take those lessons learned and put them in the handbook. I think you saw this, hopefully you saw this during the pre-work, but during the voyage, we'll do this as well. When we see there are issues in the handbook, we'll make corrections. And if they're major corrections, we'll post that in Chingu News so you get an alert. You can see what we've done and when we've done it, so it won't be a surprise. So in choosing your project, again, really the most important thing is choose something that has a scope that you can complete, again, in the 8 weeks. Remember, you can always add more features, but it's really, really tough to take features away once you start to implement them. I can give you a personal example. The team that I was on in Voyage 3 and 4, we had a scope that was very large, and we actually had to spill over from Voyage 3 to Voyage 4 to get it done. We had a working MVP in Voyage 3, but it was just too rough. So we continued on into Voyage 4 to finish it up. And so I would advise, again, watch your scope. So again, in choosing a project, follow the handbook, but it's good to just talk about ideas. Talk about what's fun, what things that you, what apps you found useful, or what functionality you found useful that you'd like to implement. Sometimes it's useful to talk about what are your pain points, in apps that you're using, or in some work that you need to accomplish. Where's the pain, and can you write an app to cure that pain? That's a good source for inspiration. And we've talked about the MVP. That's absolutely critical. And then the other thing is choosing a tech stack. What I would advise is, while you want to stretch your boundaries, you want to get out of your comfort zone. If there's 3 components, just for argument's sake, to your tech stack, I would only pick one. I'd pick 2 that are familiar to everyone in the team, and 1 that's unfamiliar. I'd be careful about taking on too much new in the stack area, just because you'll find that 8 weeks is a pretty short amount of time. So I wouldn't advise doing something like, no one on the team has used React, so we're going to use React. We're going to use PostgreSQL database. We're going to use MongoDB with an ORM like Mongoose for saving our logs and whatnot. Just throwing in so many new things that you're not as it makes it hard to reach your objective if you throw in too much new. So I'm going to pause for a second and look at questions. So I think there was a question about how to find a project or an NGO. Really the project is up to your team. As I said, you might look at apps that you admire that you'd like to do, not just a clone, but you'd like to expand on the functionality of that app in some way. Or you might choose, what are apps you use that have particular pain points, and you'd like to improve on that. Keep in mind as well that an app isn't always a single-page app. It's perfectly acceptable if you decided that you wanted to do a Slack bot or a discourse bot, or you wanted to extract information from a data source like a Twitter or anything with an API feed, and visualize it in some way, or make a visual presentation for your users. All of those are perfectly acceptable. We really are not putting any boundaries on what is an app. So just to wrap up this section on how to choose your project, your first sprint. This is basically your first week. Devote that to deciding what technologies you want to be in your app. What is your app would be number one. set up your project and start creating a backlog. Document through whether it be on Trello or whatever method you choose to maintain your backlog. Identify and get some consensus within the team on what are the features you would like to have in it, and then you can drill down and turn those features into tasks that you want to accomplish each week. So that addresses that. Uh, that's basically part of the agile methodology. That when you start at a high level, break those big rocks down into smaller rocks, and work each week to a goal. One of the questions that's posted is, according to your intro to Scrum, you talk about roles, among them product owner, Scrum, and Scrum Master. How do they apply to the Voyage? That's a good question. What I would say is the Scrum Master applies. We don't really call it a Scrum Master in a Voyage. We've chosen to go with a more generic project manager title. This is just such a great question because the project manager role is not as the team lead. It's not the boss, if you will, of the team. There's no quote traditional managerial responsibility the PM has. The PM is there to really help guide the team and to be an advocate for the team. So the PM's job is to make sure the backlog is getting created. The PM is also responsible for making sure that everybody on the team has a voice. You will find that every team, there are people that have very strong opinions. They may have more experience than other people on the team. That doesn't mean that no one else on the team should have a say. It really is collaborative, and there should be consensus. So the PM helps to move that along. The PM will also, that part of that role is if there is a problem. Heaven forbid if a team of four, if two people drop out, the PM should reach out to one of us on Chingu-X, and we'll give you some advice on that, and we'll see if we can help out in an area like that. So we do prefer that the teams try to take care of the problems themselves. And this is because it's really because one of the main goals of the Voyage is to help prepare you for the job, the marketplace, and that's something that you'll have to do in a real job, is to help work through issues. So we like you to try, but by all means, if you need ideas, you need to bounce situations, why we're there to help. So someone had said, oh, that was on a different project, that you're 4 weeks into the project. That was in another area. No problem, another organization. The answer to there was a question about, being on a similar type of Voyage in another organization. Could someone else from the Chingu team piggyback on that project? By no means will we say no. The only thing I'd caution is be careful of your time, and you want to maintain your focus and do one thing well, if you will. By all means, if you've got the time to participate on multiple projects and you want to, we certainly don't care. However, if your time is short and you can only maintain your focus on one project to do it well, I would say do that. Because at the end of the day, I think you'll get the most out of a project where you're successful. So a question is, so the team comes up with a project to work on together. Everybody had different ideas. They talk it out and decide on one. Is that correct? Absolutely. Each team should work on one and only one project. the goal isn't to have, if you're on a team of three, to have three separate solo projects. The goal is to have one project, and everyone on the team provides some types of or contributes to that project in some way. Obviously, there's writing code. There's also, I would not underestimate the README. It's one thing to write usable and quality and bug-free code, but if people don't know how to use your app, that's a bad thing. So the README is really important. So I hope that answers that. Your team will also want to pick what project management tools you may or may not want to use. I've seen teams that do very well in Google Docs, for example, where it's just a simple document where they maintain their backlog and their list of who's doing what. There are other teams that do really well with services like ZenHub, and there are a lot of different types of program or software as a service that integrates with GitHub in that respect. That they create a Kanban board, if you will, of what's in the backlog, what are we working on right now, and what's completed. So those are all good tools. I would say what you choose to use depends on your team and the details, if you will. What your team is comfortable with. At the end of the day, what really matters isn't what tools you use, it's how productive you are in getting the job done. The other thing, or the last thing in Sprint Zero, is you'll probably want to come up with some kind of mock-up of at least at a high level, what are the main screens or pages in your app, and what's the purpose of those pages, and how do they interact with one another? What's the flow? Again, I've seen people use Adobe XD really successfully. Lil Gang Wolf, Francesca on our team, uses Adobe XD day in and day out. There are other people that just use pencil and paper. I'm afraid I'm a dinosaur. I use essentially graph paper, and I prefer to draw by hand my apps. And then a lot of times I will translate that into some type of mock-up tool if it's a very complicated app. But again, it's a personal thing. I always start with pencil and paper. So with that, I'm already running a little behind. Let's move from choosing your project to attributes of successful teams. And by the way, we'll have 15 minutes or so at the end of this for just general Q&A if I miss anything, or if you have other questions that come up. So again, in the handbook, in the cohort resources section, there's a whole group of write-ups on soft skills, and these all center around essentially teamwork and project management. So the traits of highly effective teams, they're listed here, but essentially your team members, your team should have a common vision. That's why consensus is so important. And it's important to recognize that there's a difference between agreement and consensus. I could disagree with someone all day long, but we can have consensus on what our goal is or what we're going to do that day or that week. So it's good to maintain that distinction, respect everybody's opinion, and again, work together towards the goal. Motivation is absolutely critical. If you're on a team and you or another team member isn't motivated, what you'll see is the amount of work, the amount of attention that individual puts into the project is going to decline. It's not going to be where it should be. So it's good to recognize that, especially as you get to know your teammates better. Even though we're in chat, most of the time, you'll be able to pick up when they're depressed, or there's a problem, or there's something bothering them, and I would suggest that it's perfectly fine to reach out and say, hey, is everything okay? Uh, you don't have to do that in the public channel. You can set up a one-on-one to do that. But it's really be aware of one another and support one another when they have a success as well as a failure. Uh, at the end of the day, teams work best when they support one another. And that's actually part of emotional awareness as well. They're both tied together. Um, Communication goes without saying. That's a key. Um, Communication it isn't one way, it's two-way. To be an effective communicator, you can't just speak well or type well, or be able to express your ideas. You have to also listen to what the other individual's trying to say, or your teammates. Uh, uh, Listening is unfortunately it doesn't get the attention that it deserves all the time. So that's something I would pay particular attention to, and to keep asking yourself as part of your kind of personal retrospection is, am I listening enough? When someone says something, they may mean something entirely different. Uh, and so it's always good to ask questions, and again, do one-on-ones if that's what it takes. Uh, but learn to listen, to pick up on those cues that you get, those indicators that something may not be quite right. I would also say that related to again, emotional awareness and communication, understand which members of the teams are extroverts and introverts. And for you introverts, I know it's hard to speak up. I mean, I absolutely understand that. One of my really, really good friends in Chingu is an introvert who is an extremely talented developer, but this person is an introvert by nature, but has learned that she has to speak up. And I would say that's a goal for you. Learn how to express your opinion. Don't be afraid. And likewise, teammates, when you know that someone on your team is an introvert, I would say adjust your communication accordingly. Help that person express themselves. Make it an environment where people feel open to exchanging ideas and thoughts. Something else to watch out for is stress tolerance. Um, 8 weeks sounds like it's a long time, but it's fairly short. And when things go wrong, uh, sometimes tempers flare and stress increases. So again, it's good to keep in mind, nobody's going to die if this application doesn't go out the door. And I can tell you, I've worked on applications where quite literally people would die if the app wasn't right, or could die. That is a whole level of stress I don't want anybody to have to experience. And luckily, we don't have that situation here. So when you're under stress, when something's not working, take the time to step back, put it into perspective. Work towards the root cause and work together. Problems are quite often the best solutions come out of collaboration rather than some lightning bolt of inspiration by an individual. So yeah, so that should be tier 4, an app where someone dies. So in any event, recognize that stress when it comes on, and do your part to lower the I say drama, that's kind of negative, but sometimes it happens that drama creeps in. Recognize when that happens and do your part to kind of level things out, and again, talk and communicate. Conflict resolution, again, we've talked about that, but it's not a zero-sum game. We're not in this for win-lose. We're in this for everybody to win by learning more about the technology, how to work on a team, and ultimately to prepare yourself for either entering into the job market or a better job. Um, so when conflicts arise, again, it's very similar to what I said in stress tolerance. Take a step back and just think about the situation, reach out and work with someone, and and work from a point of your commonality rather than your differences. So then lastly, a positive mood really helps. Um, Again, I've worked on teams where there was a very, very negative atmosphere, uh, and the team disintegrated because of it. Actually, this was in a workplace. Um, a lot of that went because that particular team went to everything. They centered on everything negative. They never took the time to celebrate a success, however minor it may have been. Those little successes are really key. So you want to build on those. You also want to reach out and recognize your teammates when they've done something good. Uh, and just generally, um, again, work towards that kind of setting a positive mood that helps everyone out and supports your team. So I'm going to pause again and look at the questions. Um, let's see. Yeah, someone had pointed out that Adobe XD is good and it's free. That's absolutely true. Sketch is good, although I believe Sketch is, there's a fee for Sketch. There's also an open source program called Pencil. Um, Pencil has become dated a bit. It's a nice it's a nice basic tool, but over the years it's become a little dated because the team that supports it, I don't think they've put out a new release since maybe last June or so. There's also, if you're a Google user, there's an extension for Google called Draw.io. I tend to use it a lot. It has some simple uh, mock-up and wireframing tools. It's a good free drawing program. In lot of the diagrams that you see in the handbook were written with Draw.io. So again, at the end of the day, we Chingu is tool agnostic. We don't care what tool you use, as long as it's a tool that you're comfortable with and that you personally are productive with. That's really all that matters at the end of the day. So let's go on to project requirements and the timeline. And by all means, if other questions come up, post them in the chat and we'll get to them. Again, basically, we're just starting the voyage part. The voyage is a bit simpler than pair programming from an administrative standpoint because there is no pass-fail to this. The pass-fail is what you learn and what you personally, you and your team gain from the project. That's what it's all about. At the end of the voyage, we'll take we'll provide a form. You'll give us the URL to your deployed app, and we'll create a showcase. And we'll pick the best projects, and we'll look at adding them to the Chingu.io webpage as well. But the showcase is all about jointly all of us getting together and celebrating our successes. So that's really the reward from the voyage. What you learn to improve your skills and to get ready for the job market or again a better job, and again celebrating together, and also getting ready maybe for the next voyage. We have a lot of folks that are serial voyagers. So let me pause and take a question. Do we plan the whole 8 weeks worth of work in the first sprint? Who comes up with that plan? And again, this is related to roles. An absolutely great question. What I would say is in the first sprint, it's that sprint zero, we call it in Scrum terms. What you want to do is define what are the very high level features that you want your app to have. In other words, what's the value that your app is going to deliver to your end user? So in sprint zero, I would define that. And at the end of sprint zero, I would have that broken down into a backlog of tasks for sprint one. That's basically, here are the things that you need to do in sprint one to have, or basically to have some type of release, however minimal it may be. Again, it may just be the splash page. That's perfectly acceptable. So the kind of working around this in a long way, but the answer is you define your goal and the value your app has, and kind of your high level screens, what you think the pages or the screens will be in sprint zero. And then each week you work at the end of each sprint, you plan the tasks for the following sprint. The reason for that, and the beauty of Agile, is that you've heard that expression, you don't know what you don't know. Well, if you try to define a complete specification in that first week, what you'll find is that it's not going to match the app that you deliver at the end of the 8 weeks. And that's because things change. You're going to hit problems in different sprints. You're going to have new ideas come in that you want to incorporate that. So you're taking a just-in-time approach. You're defining the high level, and then each sprint, you're planning what you're going to do in that sprint. So at the end of each sprint, at the end of each week, you'll have a release, if you will, of your app that has progressively more features added to it. So I hope that answered the question. The individual that comes up with a plan, there is no one individual. The project manager helps capture that into a backlog, into some document or some tool. But the team is responsible for the decisions of, what app will they deliver and what are they going to do from week to week. The PM is acting more as a guide. So it's really a collaborative exercise. So the question, do we have to reapply for each voyage? And the answer is yes. We have a lot of folks that will do, there is no normal, if you will, or norm. We have people that do a couple voyages back to back. We have people that do every other voyage. We have people that'll do a voyage or maybe even 2 voyages, and 6 months later, 6 months goes by before they do the next voyage. And again, all of those are perfectly fine, but that's why we ask folks to reapply for each voyage. So basically, Sprint Zero is developing the main sagas in Scrum terms. That's absolutely spot on. In Scrum terminology, there are really kind of 3 divisions of items in your backlog. You have sagas, which are extremely high-level things. They span multiple, almost the whole voyage, if you will, in many cases. So you have sagas, you have epics, which typically they're larger items. They cannot be completed in a single sprint, so they may span 2 to 3 sprints. And then finally, you have just a task, a user story, and the life of the user story is a single sprint. So it's very granular. So the question, should we be releasing something at the end of each sprint? There is no formal release. We're not going to look over your shoulder and say, okay, send us your URL. We're going to grade it. It's not like that at all. This is more of a team-driven goal. uh, to be able to have something deliverable at the end of the voyage, um, what we've found is it helps to be able to have something to show at the end of each sprint. Uh, so what you're doing by doing that, you're building a small piece of the app in sprint, call it sprint one, and then in sprint two, you're building on top of that foundation to do more, to add more screens, to add more functionality. So you're moving up that ladder till you get to the end of the voyage. So in terms of our schedule, uh, obviously we ended the pre-work last week. The voyage officially started yesterday. Uh, we have been working for several days on getting the teams of the villages sorted out, and my hope is that you'll start seeing notifications for team assignments come out tomorrow. The GitHub repos, you're going to see those come out by tomorrow. And you're also going to see notifications for your team channels in Discord come out as well. So you'll be given kind of your own little area that's just a place for you and your team to talk about whatever you need to talk about. Every Monday, starting not tomorrow, but next week, every Monday, we'll ask for a check-in from each user that basically lets us kind of gauge the health of how are you feeling? Are you making progress? How do you feel about the voyage? Are there any issues? Are there any successes? So, we would appreciate if you give us that feedback every Monday. Again, that'll be starting on the, the 18th. And that'll happen for each of the following sprints. Pardon me. On Saturday, May the 4th, the cohort officially ends, and the projects will be due. On that following Sunday, the 5th, we'll send out a survey as we did for the pre-work. Basically, we really want your feedback. It helps us a lot. We've gone through every one of your responses in the pre-work. As a team, Chingu-X has a retrospective at the end of each pre-work and each voyage project phase to learn. What did we do wrong? What did we do right? Where were there problems? And so we're continually tweaking this particular program to make it better. And again, an example of that most of you aren't aware of, but in Voyage 7, and there was a concurrent voyage going on called Voyage Beta that ended in January, beginning of February. We learned a lot from those two voyages. And a lot of what we learned there fed into this voyage. This is the first voyage where we've had a pre-work, for example. Again, thanks for what you've provided. Keep it coming. And again, we do go through all of those surveys we send out with a lot of rigor. The project showcase will be on May 11th. That'll take us about a week to go through everything. In the past, what we've done is we've packaged up. I don't think you've seen this, but we've packaged up. I say we, meaning Chance, has packaged up all of the projects and created a Medium article that shows, who are the team members, what is this project about, and to make it visible to folks outside of Chingu. We are also talking, and I may be letting the cat out of the bag here. I may be saying something that is a bit premature, but what we would like to do, and it's not a guarantee, but on May the 11th, we would actually like to have some type of, I don't know if it'll be a YouTube or a group chat in Discord or what form it'll take, but some type of a joint celebration where we can kind of get together as everyone in Voyage 8 to pat each other on the back and to recognize everyone's good work. So uh, it's a bit early to talk about Voyage 9, but there will be 2 more voyages this year. Voyage 9 will start at the end of May. And I don't have a date on Voyage 10, but it'll probably be in the end of August, perhaps beginning of September. One of the things we learned from Voyage 7 and Voyage Beta was don't conduct a voyage over the holiday season in December. That was a bad timing on our part. So I'm going to go back to questions. Let's see, so we should be releasing something. Oh, I answered that one. I'm sorry. Yeah, party, absolutely. We're all about parties. So that's all I had. This has just been a quick walkthrough of what we're going to do over the next 8 weeks of the voyage. Go ahead and continue to post questions. We'll stay on until for another 15 minutes or so. I will let you know also, we're planning another one of these next weekend, so that after your Sprint Zero, we know you're going to have additional questions, that there'll be things come up, and we'll answer or do our best to answer those then. Also, another just kind of little teaser, we have more of these Meet the Developer AMAs scheduled from now through mid-April. So we have some pretty interesting people. They're going to be sharing their time with us and answering questions and telling us, really sharing how they got from being, a novice in the industry to someone with a good job, who's using what they've learned and have become, recognized. So let's see, questions come up. How would you recommend going about showcasing experience in a voyage on your resume or a job interview? That is an excellent question. I can tell you what I do on my resume is I actually list Chingu as a job, because for me it's kind of is a job. It's a labor of love, but I call out the fact that I'm in a volunteer organization that we're helping improve our skills and working with others to increase our skills, both in hard skills and soft skills. I think this is a personal opinion. I think one of the values of Chingu is that you can go to a lot of different places and you can learn all about the intricacies of JavaScript or Vue.js or some piece of technology, but to put it together where you can say, hey, I've built a project on a team. We used an agile-like methodology. We had a plan we followed, and we delivered on that. We were successful in completing a project. Highlighting that on your resume is very valuable, and I think that those soft skills are something that will set you apart from other applicants, other folks applying for the same job. So to be more direct, if you're someone who's already has a job, I would list that kind of one of those things you put at the end of your resume in terms of what other things are you involved in? What are your professional certifications, whatnot? That's perfectly appropriate there. If you're not employed, I think I would move that higher up in your resume and put it as, again, almost as like an experience. As, hey, I have this experience from this date to this date. I participated in Chingu and learned hard skills, soft skills, built projects on a team, all of those things. So I apologize for being so lengthy in that answer. But I think that it does have value, and it's something that will help distinguish you from others. Okay, so here's a question. This may be totally irrelevant. No, nothing's irrelevant. But maybe you can answer if we have extra time. As a Voyager, I will be learning a lot of skills. What is it that Chingu-X gets out of this? It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but it's also skills for us. Um, we enjoy writing code. And every single one of us have been through at least 2 voyages ourselves. So in some ways I could say we feel your pain. We've been there. Um, but we're wanting to build Chingu into something a bit broader. Um, we think there's a lot of value in what we do and helping people, again, either get a start or to improve skills. It's the interaction we get from everyone here is incredible. You know, we're kind of feed off of your energy, and that's what we get out of it. From a technical standpoint, we're writing some really sophisticated things in the background that you're not seeing right now. Everything that we do manually, we're actually writing, almost everything we do manually, we're writing automation to do that. So we're trying to strengthen this whole platform and make it run smoother so we have more time to deal on a person-to-person level. So I hope that answers the question. Um, at the end of the day, maybe the real answer is that we are just super geeks. Um, let's see, another question. Okay, there was another question about on your resume. I think we addressed that, but yeah, I think it's a good addition. Again, what I stress or suggest is stress the hard skills and the soft skills. Again, soft skills being project management, using an agile-like methodology, working on a team. All of those are things that a lot of people coming out of a traditional education don't have. You know, they have skills, but they don't necessarily, it's not universally true, but they don't necessarily uh, have that work experience or that experience of how to put it together in a group. Um, let's see here. Have any Chinguites gotten jobs based on their work here? I don't know if it's solely based on their work here, but I can tell you that in particular, 3 of the people that you're going to be hearing from in the AMAs, actually 4 of the people you're going to be hearing from in the future AMAs are all Chingus. They're currently Chingus. They have jobs in the industry. And you know, that's a question we certainly will ask them. But yes, I believe that's true. So we still have time for questions if you have any. Okay. Um, you know, I'd note, you know, keep an eye on Chingu news. We've tried to stay current and post things as they come up, so you're not surprised by anything. It would like to give you a little warning. I will say that for these AMAs that are coming out, the plan is that um, we'll shoot for announcing them every Tuesday. We're trying to stick with the same time on Saturday, and I absolutely understand that 1 or 2 p.m. GMT -5 isn't a good time for absolutely everyone. We will look at mixing those up, but we always have the replay. Everything we're doing, we're putting out on YouTube, like this. It'll be in the Chingu channel in a couple hours. Let's see, a question. What criteria are you looking at when you're sorting people into teams? Is it experience level or time zones? I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I've been involved in other things and not on the team sorting, but I believe that it's actually a combination of the two. This time around, they've been uh, trying to get folks within, I believe it's ±2 time zones, just because it's so much easier. If you're 8 time zones apart, just coordinating meetings becomes incredibly difficult. And when you have people that aren't able to show up for team meetings, it really impacts the project. So we're shooting for people in about the same time zone. We are absolutely trying to spread out experience levels. Um, you'll find that tier ones will be grouped together, but we're trying to pick people that have some people that are maybe they're brand new, but there will at least be someone on the team who has a bit more experience, even if they are a tier one, or the same thing in a tier two. If you're a tier two, there will be people of different experience levels as well. So. Let's see, it'd be nice to have links to the handbook, website, etc., pinned in Discord. That's a good idea. We will take care of that. Let's see, how far are you guys looking for Chingu long term? So another great question that I'm not sure I have an exact answer. We're not looking to shut it down. We don't have any kind of date in mind that says, oh, we're going to do this for another year and then we're going to just stop it. Our goal is, as a team, our goal is that we want it to perpetuate or to continue on. We would only like to build onto what we already have. So we do want to keep improving it, and that's basically it. I don't have a really good answer. We don't have like a 5-year plan or a 2-year plan. At this stage, we're really focusing on about 2 voyages out. So call it, 6 to 9 months, something like that. Have you thought of using book.chingu.io or a special URL to redirect to the handbook? No, we haven't. That's a good idea. I'm going to make a note of that. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. We have a little bit, I think we have a little bit of leeway in URLs, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Let's see, a suggestion that Chingu could propose ideas for projects that would help Chingu. Totally optional, but teams could contribute to Chingu in this way. Another good idea. And we will look at that. I will say that there's one Chingu. I think a lot of you know Florin Pop. He has a project that he started where he's collecting application ideas from anyone, essentially. He has a GitHub repo that you can contribute to add ideas and also to add solutions to. So it's a way to exercise skills and learn new things, but on a much smaller level. It has the time span of about call it a week per project rather than 8 weeks or longer. So I will post his that URL in the show notes when we're done, and you can see it, and you can decide if that's something that's useful. Again, on the broader note, I'll talk to our team about that. I've got a couple thoughts as to how we might collect your ideas. So thank you for that. You are going to hear about ticketing systems very shortly. We actually have a ticketing system in GitHub that we've used on the past, I think three, maybe 4 voyages, where rather than us taking your issue reports and whatnot in chat, we actually ask you to open a ticket. I understand that could be a royal pain. Nobody likes ticketing systems, but the thing that it provides us is it means that we don't forget. It's recorded somewhere. We monitor the open tickets, so we know what's outstanding and what has been open for a long period of time or a period of time. We don't want tickets or issues to go unresolved for long periods of time. So I'll be providing more information about that this week. We'll get you the documentation for that. I will say it's using GitHub's issue system, which we don't we have kind of outgrown. Let's put it that way. At some point down the line, it won't be in Voyage 8, but in a future voyage, we'll transition to something a little more robust. But that's what we're using today, and I'll open that up to you. So, oh, you mean a ticketing system for contributing and for Chingu work? And yeah, let's talk about that on Discord. And so I want to make sure I don't misunderstand that. So we are at the end of our time. I'm going to leave it open for just another minute. If there's any more questions, by all means, post them. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll keep monitoring Discord and keep your posts coming. We enjoy them. Oh, yeah, and I see the comment, using a ticketing system for project suggestions. Yeah, I think we can use our existing ticketing system for that. We actually have tags on the tickets that you can apply to designate, is it a bug or is it an enhancement, things like that. So there's a little categorization that can be made to each ticket that'll help us sort out, what's it dealing with. Okay. So with that, I'm going to close out this AMA. Thank you again for participating and for all your good questions. This week is hopefully be a fun week. We're going to have a lot happening in the next 24 to 48 hours. There's going to be a lot coming out in terms of team assignments and what we just spoke about, the things we'll post in the show notes. And then again, by Tuesday, I will post the schedule for next week's AMA. So thanks, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll see you out on Discord. Bye-bye.